looks to me like we are live. Hello, everybody. I am Nancy Marmolejo, and you are tuning into Heard Conversations About Listening. As I clear my throat, I am writing a book, and the book is called Heard Transforming Leadership Through the Power of Listening. Obviously, I'm on a big listening kick. I profess to be the world's greatest listener. And that's why I like to teach this, because I don't think any of us are perfect, except possibly Michelle, because I'm going to be showing you some of her scores that she got a little while ago. But I think that it's a really important topic. I think that we have so many distractions around us. We have so much pressure around us. We're just waiting for everybody to hurry up and finish so we could say the thing we need to say, or we can run to the next thing. So what I'm doing in this interview series is talking to people about the actual art of face-to-face listening, person-to-person listening. I met Michelle a couple of years ago, and it's always been so impressed by her and who she is and what she's doing in this world. So Michelle Rodriguez is going to be my guest in this conversation. She is the Director of Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging at LinkedIn. She oversees the employee resource groups, the ERGs, 18,000 people in employees. And there's like how many ERGs? There's just
12 ERGs.
Bunches of them.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk to Michelle about, listening and how that connects into the world of diversity, inclusion, and belonging, how that shows up in her day-to-day life. But first of all, I want to say welcome, Michelle. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I love inviting people to share a little bit more about who they are in their own words, rather than me just kind of rattling through your bio. Who is Michelle Rodriguez?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Nancy. I'm really excited to be here with you. I think you're always so thoughtful and thinking about the whole leader. So I'm really excited to be in discussion with you today. I actually just hit my 9-year anniversary at LinkedIn. And so it's been a wild, awesome ride. So I get to lead a team that we call Environment of Belonging in communities, and thinking about strategies that influence inclusive behaviors across our company, engage people in belonging in their everyday world. But I also get to think about amazing employee leaders that include our ERG leaders, and thinking about how we are developing their leadership. How are we creating their amazing listening skills and ability to be strategic leaders across the business? So excited to do that work. But also when I think about just my whole trajectory of career, it's been its own squiggly line. Like, I have worked in tech for now 16 years or so. And when I think about the red thread, it's always been employee engagement. It's always been about understanding the pulse of employees, what makes them feel like they belong. And before then, before I even knew these type of roles existed, I was an undergrad at Santa Clara University, and I was studying sociology and ethnic studies. And I say that because I think a lot of people are like, I can only work in tech if I studied business and engineering. We need all the different types of skills, right? And at that time, I thought, well, I'm going to work in community, and I'll be a nonprofit leader, because that was kind of the only example I had for the type of things that I was interested in. So I did a little bit of that as well. And, I'll talk about that, of like how that was really foundational for my leadership now, in understanding how to hear people, how to listen to people different than myself. And so a lot of the nonprofit work that I did was in Eastside San Jose, a lot of also college access organizations in the Bay Area, but also in Los Angeles. So that was a real foundation to my work. Holistically, I'm a whole life. I'm a mother of 2 young kids. I have a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old, so I'm in the thick of it. They're very beautiful. Lots of people think they're twins. They look like twins, but they're not.
Aww.
And, I have a great husband, daughter of immigrants. And I say that because I think the first generation hustle is something that I've appreciated, unlearned a bit, helped thrive now, in just how I show up as well.
I love that. Well, first of all, as the 6-year-old and 8-year-old, you are in the hotbed of diorama making. It's like every there's a project. Where's a shoebox?
Where's
I know
the
that
shoebox? That's too real. Literally,
like
there's a diorama summer project right now.
to this day, I will not throw out shoeboxes in fear of what if somebody needs it. It's like my daughter's a college graduate. I'm past the diorama stage unless it's for myself, but
Oh,
I really want to just acknowledge something about your story because I always have to have people remind me about who they are and what they're doing. But you know, you having had a sociology and ethnic studies degree, you are so my people. All right. So I was liberal studies with definitely the emphasis around ethnic studies and you know critical theory and all of that. And I went into teaching, and this
Mhm.
was people said, well, you're just going to become a teacher with that. You know, you're either going to go into some sort of you know education or social service.
Yep.
I really, really appreciate the way that you found a way into tech without being the tech person. You found your way into tech on the human side of things, on
Mhm.
the people to people level, which is what I absolutely love. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you. I think it also opens people's eyes up to the types of career opportunities that are out there
Right.
because it's not just I'm a
Right.
you know, computer scientist or software engineer, whatever it is. So
Right.
congratulations on your success. I definitely, you know, appreciate the work you're doing and the choice you made to support the human side of
Mhm.
people working in regardless, whether it was in tech, whether it's
Right.
in social work, very cool. And so I before I wanted to just reflect on something because I created this listening essentials quiz because we're going to be talking about listening, and you've already you know dropped a few hints that we're going to be hearing some bit about you. But you had I have this listening essentials quiz, and anybody wants to take it, you go to herdbook.com/quiz. Even if you just go to herdbook.com, the quiz you can find the quiz on there. You got one of the highest scores I've seen. It's like most
Sorry,
people are
Nancy.
like struggling in the 65 to 70% range. And you came out with this 86% overall score. So what it does is it tracks you in three categories. Presence, like are you able to focus, undistracted, like here we are. Presence, I mean, I know presence is I'm here, I'm focused. Patience is I'm going to wait. I'm going to let you finish your sentence. Do your thing. I'm not going to jump all over you. And then phrasing is really knowing how to say things that open people up as opposed to shutting them down, or you know the famous thing, people jump into a solution. You know,
Yeah.
somebody says, "Gee, I'm so frustrated." Well, here's 10 things you need to try, and it's like that's not what I really wanted. But your highest score, and I would share screen, but I'm so terrified because I'm already having issues with StreamYard right now. Because actually, I don't even know if we're even you know broadcasting on LinkedIn right now. But your score for presence was 96%.
Wow.
That's
Okay.
crazy. That's something. So let tell us a little bit more about how is it that you scored so high? So let's say somebody's talking to you and there's a million things going on around you. How do you maintain focus with somebody?
Well, I will say I'm not always great at this. I will start with where I can improve. Usually it's with my kids, because I have to beat the cell phone screen that sometimes takes my attention. But what I have tried to practice with my kids in terms of presence is I'll turn the phone down and away if they want to talk to me and like I'm on the phone. So like I try to give them my full presence by saying, let me put this away and hear you out. But I think about when I'm in my professional role and, you know, day to day, usually people are coming to me with like a plethora of things. It can be kind of like run a business, kind of let's go through this meeting and solve this problem. But there are some times in my line of work where people are coming to me with something heavy, or they don't know who else to go to, or they heard from somebody, oh, she'll hear you and she'll help you. So sometimes I'm hearing people out with, you know, just they're people issues. And this is just has been on every role, right? In terms of working in the space of employee engagement, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And so it's really important that I allow people to feel like I'm fully with them. And in those conversations, I really try not to look at different screens, look at my phone. If I'm in person with them, I try to have my hands out on the table. I learned something about like open palms so people don't feel like you're hiding anything. Trying to put like my feet on the floor, right? Like these are little things that I've just learned over the years. And having people feel like I'm fully listening to them. And maybe this is the first time they've trusted somebody to like talk about a workplace issue, or maybe this is something hard for them to hear about. I really also try to keep a neutral face so that I can feel like I can fully just intake. And also, I have to remind folks like in the space of belonging work, it's not about agreeing with everything that everybody says. It's truly just creating this space of respect of you have a different life path than me. You have a different experience than me, but I'm going to fully respect that because that's your truth. And so I think being able to be fully present is the first sign of respect, but also building that trust that that person feels like, okay, they're going to hear me out. And this person may be able to be a bridge to something else.
Oh my gosh. You know what I love? I love that you added in these little somatic practices to get your body and your brain and your focus all aligned. That is something that we teach in our trainings and in our framework is just these little moments, like you had said, put your palms up, put your feet on the floor. It's those physical, it also centers you saying,
Mhm,
okay, I am here right now. I'm not,
mhm.
you know how you talk to somebody and it's like you feel like they're ready to run a race, like they can't wait to jump away from you, and it's like
Yeah.
you found this place of stillness, and even if it's just for a minute, you're able to lock into that place of stillness. That's a gift.
Mhm. Yeah.
I want to
Work
acknowledge
we're
you for
always
that.
works in progress. We always gotta work on it.
Okay. Now, you're awesome. And I will share an area where you scored 79%, which is still like super high, but it's in patience. Patience
Mm,
is my lowest score, and I'm constantly working on it.
yep.
So I did notice that about you. That was it was still a really high score, but it was lower than that stellar 96% of presence.
I mean, you said it, Nancy. Something I have had as a personal goal, like this past year, is to allow people to finish their full thought. I am the worst sometimes at just like, oh, like I get so excited at like when someone's talking about something, I'm like, oh yeah, da, 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 and I like want to add into it. I've, heard different takes that like sometimes this is cultural, sometimes like folks from more, communal cultures, this is like just normal. I don't know, but I'm like, it is something I'm working on because I think it can cut people off. I don't want to continue interrupting people. It is out of excitement. And sometimes it can be something that I've had to learn and unlearn of like, how do you get your voice heard in a meeting? Especially if like you're one and only, especially if you maybe are not the one to have the first thing to say in a meeting. That's usually me. I'm like the type to normally just kind of sit back, soak something in, think about it. But then I have found myself like trying to edge my way into a conversation that can be very dynamic and lively and make sure like I have something to say too. But that is like the trickiest part for me is the patience. Um, I think children can teach you a lot of patience. So I feel like my role as a mother, just allowing, my kid to kind of like reiterate their question a couple times. But that is the area I'm trying to work on.
Oh my gosh. We're kindred spirits in there. And then you were right in the middle on phrasing. And generally phrasing is, the one go-to we always end up touching back on with our community here is, do you want to be helped or do you want to be heard? Checking the
Mhm.
need. So
Yeah.
many times people, especially you as a leader, people come to you, Michelle, this is happening, that's happening. And there are people who default into, okay, here's how to fix it. And the person doesn't want to, and they want to be heard. And
Mhm.
then there's times when somebody wants the solution. So we just ask, it's like, okay, do you need to like talk it through, or do we want to talk about, a solution?
Yeah.
Just that simple question.
Mhm.
I find myself having to say that to a lot of people. I was at a networking event a few months ago, and I was sharing something that I was particularly having, a challenge with, and somebody launched into offering me how to fix it. And it was really overwhelming. And I
Yeah.
wasn't like taking notes. I wasn't at my desk. I wasn't able to process the information they were giving me. It was just, and
Yeah.
I just gently said, thank you so much. I'm not really in a place to get that information right now. Let me just kind of, let me vent for a few more minutes,
Right.
and,
Right.
and it was really telling for the other person going, oh, I have a tendency of jumping into solutions before finding out if people need it.
Yeah.
It's
And
human nature.
and some people, like, that's their strength. It's like they are executors, they're operators, they see what needs to get done, and they're able to operationalize in their brain and say, "Here's a 10-step process that I can think." It's like they are amazing people on projects and places. Sometimes, you're right. It's like as leaders, we have to understand, like, is this person just wanting me to know this is happening? Do they want to solve? And so that's been something I have to remind myself too. Not everyone needs a solve. And sometimes I don't have a solve in the moment. It's like be transparent of like, I'll try to figure this out with you. But that's so real about the people that can jump in and fix it. I'm more of like the person that'll whiteboard with you. Like I am loving sort of the ideation, the excite energy at the beginning of a project. I can do it all, but like that's sort of where like my fuel goes in like ideating. But yeah, absolutely the executors are needed too.
I love that. You just strike me as somebody who's very even keeled. You have the ability to just let things unfold. Like if you love being at the whiteboard and ideating, that's being in the unknown. It's getting into
Mhm,
the messy middle, and it takes a
mhm.
special person to be able to ride that out. Some people feel very, very uncomfortable
Oh
unless
yeah.
they have a very specific answer and we know exactly how it's going to be. But you stepped into a field where it is just all about solving for the unknown, and especially on the
Mhm,
human variable. I mean, we're
mhm.
all different. Everybody's had a different life experience. I think the work that you're doing honors the fact that you might have same department, same title, same number of years of experience, but what's the path that got you here? You
Right,
described it as a squiggly line. I love that.
right, right.
First gen versus somebody who, they landed there because somebody made a phone call and made it easier for them. It's a very, very different path to get
Right.
to where you are. And I think understanding that is key to any kind of inclusion and belonging work.
Yeah. And what you said about ambiguity is so real because I think that is just the world of work that we're in right now. And I see it as like, can you sustain a high degree of ambiguity? Do you have the stamina to do it too?
Mhm.
And I think being first gen, I always relate that to my comfort with ambiguity. And like even right now, through some changes at work, I'm feeling even a little bit of angst of like in the change curve, which I normally don't. And I have to remind myself, how are the other people doing that are normally like not okay with this level of ambiguity? They must be feeling like they're stretching backwards. So like even I have to remember to meet people where they're at with like their comfort level of change in this time, with the whole transformation of work, AI, all these things. But I do attribute it to being first gen because there's so much we navigate about being first gen, first in corporate that, in the workplace, because we haven't had a blueprint. I didn't have a parent I could call and say, how do I work on stakeholder alignment? These these are all things that, you just learn as you do. And there's a lot of unwritten rules in the workplace, but how I figured them out was through community. I
Yeah.
always tell people ERGs, yes, they sustain people. Yes, you meet people there, but they are information hubs for so many folks that are first gen or new hires or whatever. It's like, hey, what does it take to be, successful here? Like, who could I talk to figure this out? I mean, the relationship currency, the network fluency that you're able to learn through ERGs and community work is huge.
Yeah.
And like when I think about like my early days in tech, I mean, I felt like a fish out of water. Like there were moments when I would just like cry in the bathroom, wipe the tears and go back out and do it, right? You just put on the best face. But it doesn't have to be that hard. And, I think back to the resilience I have as a first gen person, but the ambiguity comfort that I've gained from being first gen now is helping me out so much now.
Right? I love that. I love that. First gen's calling card. We figure stuff out.
Mhm,
It's
mhm.
like, how do you do this? I don't know.
Most of the
I've talked
time.
I have so many inspiring people that I've spoken with who, they're extremely successful to this day, but at, age 6, they were translating for their
Mhm,
parents in the social services office or at the
mhm,
school, whatever it was. So there's definitely this, nobody's ever opened the door for me before. I'm going to just open it up and see what's on the other side and, do it afraid,
mhm,
do it bravely, however
mhm.
it goes. I think that's really exciting. One of the things I wanted to ask you about is just the situations that you have that you're noticing in your work and in the communities around you. Where do you feel people right now are feeling the most heard? Like their voice is being heard, their needs are being heard, their experiences are being heard. And I'm maybe it's in the workplace, maybe it's outside the workplace, but I'd just love to know from you what you're noticing.
Well, when I think about where I've noticed it the most this past year for me, in this line of work, we have a whole ton of sentiment data. We're always looking at metrics of like, what are people's employee experience like? What are they going through? Because at the end of the day, you want to make sure people are able to show up and do the best work possible. They feel seen, they feel like they're heard, they feel like they belong. But numbers don't tell everything. And that's what I have to remind folks is like, especially when you're thinking about people, belonging, what sparks talent, you have to go under the surface. And I see quantitative data as a huge piece of the story, but then it's like the rest of the story is in the qualitative. And that's where I really feel like I'm able to gain a full picture of what's going on when it comes to like pulse of employees, when it comes to solving or diagnosing maybe things that you're noticing in the data. Maybe you're hearing a lot of noise around a certain area of like the business or something happening in an office. You can go and do a focus group session. You can go and have like one-to-one interviews with like certain employee influencers or business leaders, and you figure out so much. I mean, as long as you're able to like create the space where people feel psychologically safe to like tell you things, right? It could be things like you're setting up a focus group. And again, it comes in like everything you're saying, the tone, the presence, the respect. But also, people, what I've learned over the years, they want to talk and they want to talk about the hard things. They just need guardrails.
Yeah.
And so being able to,
And
oh, go
no,
ahead.
that's right. No, finish. Sorry. See,
I was
I'm impatient. I just get
practicing,
frustrated.
Nancy. We got this. So one of the things I was going to say is like, like what are the ground rules for the conversation? Or like letting them know, like, this is a confidential space. This is where the data is going to go. All these things, and people open up. And what I've learned long after those focus groups are over, they create huge trust bridges where like people are able to call on me again if they need something, or they're able to understand resources better. But most of all, people are like, I've never felt this heard. I hear that all the time after a focus group because, it goes beyond just filling out a survey or like hoping, you're in an audience of like a big all hands meeting that they speak to you. It's like, no, like someone took their time, and especially if they see you as somebody like representing the company in some sort of way, it's like she took the time to hear me out. And especially if it's coming from a community that's not well represented in your company, if it's somebody already feeling like the one and only on their team, or this is the first time they feel safe to be able to like voice some of these things, it is so powerful. And, I think focus groups go a really long way in doing those strategically, being able to then circle back on that data to like decision makers. It can be super, super powerful. And even taking some of those qualitative stories and beginning up, you could still talk about quantitative data and like, the hardcore strategic metrics you want, but you are able to hook even a C-suite audience in a different way with a story,
I
and
love that.
beginning with the story even before you get into the rest of that data and what it's telling you.
Well, it's human impact.
Yeah.
I'm a big qualitative data fan because it's, they're
Yeah.
both important, but there's something about the human story. What does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? How does it express itself in someone's life, in their stress level, in what they can handle, can't handle, and whether or not this is a place worth working for. There are so
Mm.
many people who feel unheard and they just quietly disappear. They
Mhm.
might just sort of, I'm just going to do the bare minimum, or they might be that person who just suddenly says, I'm out.
Yep.
Oh no,
Mhm.
what happened? It's like, well, they can lay it out. Well, here's what I've been experiencing. But without having a place for them to share, in the way that you talked about it. Something interesting, a few weeks back, there was something that came out, and it was, by a company that does a lot of workplace research and things like that. And they developed tools for the workplace, and it was talking about employee listening. And
Mm.
I'm like, oh, employee listening. But it was all about like apps and pulse surveys. It was like,
Yeah.
click on the happy face if you're happy. It doesn't tell you the story under it. And
Yep.
there's something about, like when you were talking about focus groups, a couple of years ago, we did some listening circles for an
Mhm.
organization with all of the underrepresented groups. And then we were able to bring the findings back to executive leadership, and they made significant changes
Mhm.
in just about everything, from the way that information is spread and shared, the way that people interact with each other. And you couldn't have gotten it a better way because it was in their language. We had this one group, we wanted to talk to them about bias. And they just kept looking and shrugging their shoulders like, oh, all those silly words you guys use. And then we kind of flipped it. And after some conversations, we're like, well, what about favoritism? Oh, it's a huge problem. It's a form of bias. So saying it in words that people can relate to versus, the
Mhm.
vocabulary that we use as practitioners, I
Yep.
think is so important. So it sounds like you really take it on the get it real level.
Yeah, and what you said is so real about just using plain language that decision makers will understand, because there's a difference between the language that maybe you use as a practitioner and what their language is in their organization. And I too have seen, like, when you lay it out to someone as like, this is just about having a consistent employee experience, like
Mhm.
anyone can agree to that. It's like, yeah, of course. It's like you start relating it to like the talent brand, or like, how are you helping people perform at their best? Like, those are terms and ways that people can say like, oh yeah, I can subscribe to that, like I'm behind that. Like, I think sometimes we also have to check ourselves as practitioners of like, don't let the academia get in the way of the thing to solve, or like the end goal of what we're trying to do. But that's also, the art of influencing and understanding, like, what you tell an ERG leader is not this. You could try to have the same end goal, but the how you talk to an ERG leader is going to be different than how you talk to your C-suite about like solving the same thing. It's like you have to understand what's important to that person. And
Yeah,
like,
you're so
you
well
know,
cut out for this work,
yeah.
traversing these different worlds, translating, very first gen of you, just all so
Yeah.
much. Now, so we talked about where people are feeling heard, and you're giving these great examples of focus groups and, making sure you're using language that is relatable for everybody. What about where people, like, even if you want to like look at this kind of industry wide, not necessarily your specific place of work, but where do you feel like people are not being heard?
Oof. I think in so many different areas right now. I think our world is so polarizing at the moment. And so I think that it's more often than not people not feeling completely represented by their leadership, or not feeling completely heard. I think there's a lot of conversation about the transformation of work in AI. And one of the things that I have to remind people is that everyone's experiences and fears are valid because that's their truth and that's where they're coming from. But I think that this is a time where a lot of people are feeling like their voices are going in a void. And this is where it's really important to go back to community and going back to collective voices and the ways that people are finding that joy with other folks that are feeling like they can build with. But when I think about the way to solve problems or angst, it's usually not done with like a widespread email. It's usually not done like in that way. I think it's like you really have to get under and understand feedback is a gift, meeting people where they're at, addressing the needs head on. But I think a lot of people just in this industry, outside of this industry right now, are not feeling heard. I think there's a lot of feeling of just isolation overall.
It's true. It is really true. And it's all over. I think some of the things that happen is that one of the areas that I'm really, really becoming more and more interested in serving is around neurodiversity, because there's so many people. That's sort of the invisible part of diversity, inclusion, and belonging, and so
Mhm.
there are a lot of times where people are feeling misunderstood because they're being looked at as a character flaw of something that can be something they don't have control over.
Mhm.
It's the way a person's brain operates. It's the way a person's nervous system responds to pressure.
Yeah.
We're all a little bit different there. And I am seeing that as kind of the red flag that keeps waving, that not enough people are looking at because they're not really sure how to do it, because of I think it goes back to some of the impatience of having to understand something it might be so different from a person. But
Mhm.
that's something that I'm noticing out there. Also, what you were talking about is just, we have a lot of societal stress right now. I mean,
Mhm.
as of this recording, date, there's this, what is the parasite in the lettuce? Everyone's, freaking out about salads, and then there's all,
Mm.
so many things that are happening,
Yeah.
in the socio-political landscape, geopolitics, so many different things. It is a stressful time. There's doom scrolling. It makes it feel even worse. And I think sometimes that feeling of I'm overwhelmed, but I can't say anything because then I'm going to be perceived as weak. And
Mm.
that's a form of not feeling heard as well. I
Yeah.
can't say my truth. I can't say how this is impacting my body, my nervous system, my life outside of work.
Yeah.
I have seen people who are losing their hair,
Yeah.
who are going on um, mental health leaves. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so much of it goes back to that thing of, not feeling valued, not feeling heard, being dismissed, being passed over. It's again that human to human element.
It's interesting because, as you go into leadership, I have noticed naturally people don't disclose as much. It's like people want to be more buttoned up. And that's something as a leader, I have to be really attuned on, especially when I'm thinking about my remit of work. It's like about employee engagement, it's about like the pulse of people. And so I'm also now always thinking about what is someone not saying to me? Or what is someone agreeing to because they think that's like what I want? And so one of the things that I've had to repeat in my mind at nauseum, but I know it's important, is, at times in like brainstorming or problem solving, if it's relevant in that moment, I say things like, I'm an N of one, and another leader taught me this, a former boss taught me this. I'm an N of one. I welcome pushback. Like, you can tell me if you disagree with me. Like, I need your
Say
ideas.
that in words that aren't so corporate or
Like,
mathematical. I'm an N of one. So,
I am just one person here.
yeah.
Like, how can you disagree with me right now? And,
Oh,
like,
okay.
I'm just one person. Take this as an opinion of one person. Like, imagine I'm not like the leader right now. And like sometimes the ideas will open up. Now, sometimes we do need to lead and make decisions that people don't like all the time. But like in critical problem solving spaces, it's like you have to remind people like, I need your thoughts too. And I need you to be
Yes.
courageous and disagree with me if you disagree with me. Cause you're the expert too. Or, if someone's not telling you something because when you're thinking about 18,000 people or 20 or 100,000 people, like they may not be filling out the pulse survey that you like talked about earlier. They may not be putting in the feedback form because of fear. So it's like that fear and that withdrawal and the like, I'm not going to say anything out of self-protection is really real. So like one-to-one or in small groups, I have to remind people like, take time for yourself. Like this is a heavy change time. Like I know you get it and I know your brain gets it, but if you need to take a day, take a day. If you need to go outside and meditate or do whatever you need, like let's talk about your time. Like, and they may not have asked for it, but sometimes when I say those things, people afterwards are like, thank you so much for saying that. Or like, it's
Yes.
almost like this unsaid permission that like you give people of like, you can be human. Like this is hard, like you need to go and take care of yourself. This is a sliver of your life. Like this shouldn't be the nucleus of your life.
Oh, I love that. Okay, I'm a big Ted Lasso fan.
Okay.
And so, like, I just remember there was this one great scene where a character was just furious with Coach Lasso. And instead of reacting, he just said to the person, help me understand this. And it's
Mm,
those types of questions, like what you had just said, you can ask somebody like, tell me how this could be, what are some flaws in what I just said? Who wants, just shout it out. Like where could this go wrong? That's a part of listening, because what it does is it's welcoming other voices. I think
yeah.
that's a big part of being heard. It's like there are
Yeah.
so many people who just shut down saying, why bother?
Yeah.
I'm not going
Yeah.
to say anything, because the person already has their mind made up and
Yep.
the train has left the station. But to have that openness as a leader, to just say, you know, what, how could this be better? Or where could this go wrong? They may not see it. We fall
Mhm.
in love with our own ideas to the point where we can't see anything flawed about it.
Mhm.
And then you
Yep.
hear that, and then you're getting that feedback and
Mhm.
being able to experience, like, not be defensive, but to be able to say, okay, you know what? That's an
Mhm.
idea. That's a
Yeah.
point. We don't have to decide on it right this second. I don't have to accept or reject it, but I receive it.
Mhm.
Oh,
Absolutely.
good stuff. Okay, so just, we got a few more minutes left here, and I just want to ask you, where do you think the big gap is for leaders right now? Like what do leaders need to be doing better? You've talked about people who are doing it great, and you're a wonderful example of best practices. Where do you see some of the areas for improvement?
There's a lot I think that we need to learn right now. And I keep on going back to this time of just work and change swirl right now, just like in our society, but a lot of people are going through this just in the entire tech industry. And I just think corporate in general. But there's so much change swirl in like how work is getting done, how companies are prioritizing, and not forgetting that there's people behind the work.
Mm,
I think in this rush of change, and there is a real pressure to be more efficient and valuable and all these different things, but there's people that fuel this. And there's so much with AI that is nascent still. We need human expertise as like a premier priority. And so nurturing the humans behind the work it becomes even more important in this time.
mm,
And what I've noticed is almost like a one-to-one comparison, when I listen to the news cycles, which, tend to be inflammatory, but it's like, you know, AI is replacing people's jobs and all these things. And it's like, let's not forget, like the humans are controlling that, like there's so many things that AI cannot do and will continue as humans to be uniquely human. And so the things that we need to invest in our people are just the continued skill building, the nurturing, the understanding what's going to keep them sustained and innovating. The other thing is, looking at what systemically is going on and not so much of like what's going on with the people, like why are people getting burnt out or why are people feeling this type of way? And it's like, we got to remember to zoom out as leaders. It's like, what is the environment that we're inviting people into? Whether that's an organization, whether that's a corporation, it's like understanding, people have talent, people have gifts, they want to be able to give it and thrive wherever they're at in an ideal sense of work and community. But if we're not building the right environment for those humans to feel like they can give their ideas, where they're welcomed, where they can connect with people, those ideas are never going to come through. And sometimes, I think we don't zoom out enough to look at what is the system, what is the environment that we're welcoming people into, to be able to truly, truly hear what they need, but also like, how do we even build better too?
I love that. My daughter is a recent college graduate and she's out there, looking for work in the world. And it's almost how I felt when, we were looking at what preschool should she go to? What elementary school we're going to go to? Like, is it going to be a welcoming environment? Is it somewhere where you're going to walk in and be greeted with some warmth and a smile? And that what I notice, I've talked to so many different people and they're talking to me about different organizations, like the whole onboarding experience. Like, you matter from the minute you walk in the door versus here, go do the thing. You did it wrong. I think I went through I came up in the era of nobody really cared if you were happy or felt welcomed or not. And it was hard. It was hard. I mean, it stressed me out, body, mind, and spirit, I gotta say.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that there is more attention paid to the whole person and to the emotional well-being. Maybe it's not perfect, it's like not everybody's going to have a boss who tells them go out and meditate. So Michelle, you are an outlier in a lot of ways, but we appreciate it. We want more people like you. But it's like, just the notion that, oh, I might be putting too much on you right now or too much information all at once. Not everybody is built to withstand like this, throw them into the deep end the minute they walk in the door. So I think that there are all these different phases. You're kind of touching on them as you're sharing about the whole experience in the workplace, whether someone's been there a while or somebody's brand new. It's just this feeling of welcoming, your inclusion and belonging. Like, you are safe here, you are okay here, you are welcome here, we're here to support you, we're not here to just extract from you and then throw you aside and find the next person. I think that's really important. And I also am very grateful that your job still exists, knowing that in a lot of different organizations your positions have been eliminated. And so it says a lot for the company that you work for. I think it's a great example for other organizations to show that this is something that, I mean, if you want to state the business case for listening, when people feel heard, they're going to stay, they're going to give their best work, they're going to share their great ideas. They're not going to slowly fade away and just do the bare minimum. You create a place of joy, like, hey, I have some ideas, I have something to contribute, I'm going to do it. So I feel like it helps the business side of things to really support the human side of things. And that's really evident in the philosophy that you are sharing with us today.
Absolutely. It's just good business. It's like you can't separate the human experience in an organization from like the business results. It's exactly what you said. And there's so many angles to this. There's so many research, ad nauseum. It's unfortunate that so much of this work has been politicized the way that it has been, because I think that has almost made it taboo for people to speak about. And at the end of the day, it's about consistent employee experience. It's, do you have a healthy organization You know, do you have a healthy talent life cycle from onboarding all the way to them exiting? Would they recommend that company after the exit? You know, would they still refer people there? That's all related to the success of a business. You know, where when they were there, were they able to produce the best work that they could in their career? Were their talent shown? You know, we could also look at the cost of turnover. You know, it's like you could look at anyone and say, hey, you know, from a business angle, this makes complete sense. You know, a lot
Yes.
of it is attacking semantics and, you know, again, politicizing so much. But at the end of the day, this is still a core value at the organization I'm at. This continues. So I'm grateful to be able to do the work that I do. And I work with an amazing global team that cares deeply about making the employee experience the best it can be too.
I love that. And I remember we were going to do this live last month, but you were going to Wall Street to ring
Yeah,
the bell with the Black ERG. Tell me a
yeah.
little bit more about that.
It was really cool. It was an amazing experience. I was excited to get invited. So there were leaders from our Black inclusion group that they built the relationships. This was also from relationships they had with our Black ERG at Microsoft. So they had rung the bell in years prior, but it was a beautiful celebration of Juneteenth. So lots of our members of Black inclusion group, our CFO was there, lots of executive engagement. But it was beautiful because they had a symposium of thought leaders in our New York City office, which is so iconic because it's in the Empire State Building. And then from there, that was sort of like part one. And then from there, people traveled to NASDAQ. And it was beautiful because behind the scenes, there's sort of this beautiful green, it's not a green room, it's like a green floor in NASDAQ. And they have, you know, drink service and people are able to, you know, just kind of like hang out before going on. And people were calling and FaceTiming their parents, their grandparents. There were people there that were relatives that they weren't on camera, but they were like just there to like accompany them and like be proud of them. And so for a lot of people, this meant so much. It's like, you know, it was like calling their connected loved ones and saying, hey, because of you, like I'm here. And so like lots of people took that memory with them in such a beautiful way. And it was such an empowering way to celebrate Juneteenth. And, you know, for anyone who's rung the NASDAQ bell, they like take you out after it's all said and done. And you're able to look up at the NASDAQ building in Times Square and just see like replays of like the pictures, of videos. You know, they had like the company logo. And, you know, it was also a reminder to folks like, yeah, like our Black inclusion group put this on. They built this, you know, we're honoring them, we're honoring Juneteenth. It was just beautiful. And it was like a reminder for folks of like, this community is so powerful and it is meant to be celebrated in this way too.
I love that. That sounds great.
Yeah.
I mean, just when you described the whole green room floor, you know, such a,
Beautiful place.
and I love when you said, if anyone's ever, you know, rung the NASDAQ bell, like I don't know anybody who's rung the NASDAQ bell. I don't even know how many of our listeners have rung the NASDAQ bell, but yay. I love that happened, and whoever it was that helped to put that together, huge gratitude. I think that is such important representation, and to do it on Juneteenth means so much. Michelle, we've covered a lot of ground, and I just want to check with you before we wrap it up. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you just want to throw in there as a last little comment or observation or philosophy?
Yeah. I think the last thing, and this is pretty basic, and I know you're a big proponent of this too, is like feedback is a gift. I think sometimes people don't want to do focus groups. They don't want to do the listening sessions or the circles or the one-on-ones because they might be afraid of what is out there. You know, it's like, it's a little bit of like safer to just kind of cover your ears and be like, I don't want to know. Because then if you know, well, then you have to address it. And I think that being able to understand the experience sometimes of like the most smallest voice in your organization is important, because if you build for that smallest voice, it'll be building in the best way for all. And I have been able to learn the skill of also separating or kind of decoupling my defensive mechanisms from like hearing objectively like what is being said in front of me, and really looking at myself as like, I'm just a channel here. Like, I am able to take this trusted information and make it go to where it needs to go to like build the best thing possible. But it's such an important skill as a leader because you have to be able to hear the hard feedback. You have to be
Oh,
able to understand, is there a pattern here? Yeah, sure. Sometimes there's one-off things and you gotta, okay. But if there's a pattern, if there's a theme and it's negative, you gotta address it head on. It's gonna
yeah.
make you a more courageous leader. People are gonna feel heard. You're gonna have a better organization or community that you're building. And I think we need to just be more courageous as leaders to be able to be okay with hearing all the different types of experiences going on.
Oh, I love that. Shout out to courage and shout out to emotional intelligence, because really it's being able to understand that somebody else's upset is their experience. And I think what happens is people take it personally. They think
Yeah.
that it's directed at them. And it's like, no, it's directed at a concept, an experience. So thank you for saying that. I think that's wonderful. Michelle, this has been an absolute pleasure. I'm so, so grateful that I know you have a busy schedule, you have a full life, and the fact that you made time to be here. And there's been some technical challenges around getting this to actually go and do what it originally intended to do. But I will be posting this in other places after the fact if it didn't work on the actual live stream. But
Awesome.
so much gratitude to you for showing up, for doing what you're doing. I just want everybody who's out there in the world of the humanities, sociology, liberal arts, ethnic studies, all the humanities,
All of
look
it.
at the impact you can make on the world. I'm proud to be the parent of an English major who came out of Berkeley because somebody
Yep.
said, what are you going to do with a degree in English? And I'm like, oh, what do you have against critical thinking? What do you
Mhm.
have against holding paradoxical concepts? We need that everywhere. So the
Yeah.
mindset, the brain, the training that you have, your whole disposition, I think is really well suited to the career you chose, and it's much needed. You remind people about the human aspect, and I think we need that more and more.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nancy, for your kind words and just also pushing this really important skill
All
to
right.
leaders. And shout out to you being a parent that's like, yeah, go invest in yourself and learn what you need to learn, because one of the most amazing strategic leaders on our team is also an English lit major. So, I mean, hey, let's go, you know?
Let's do that. Let's do that. All right, everybody. This has been Heard Conversations About Listening. We're talking about listening. Again, I have a book coming out, crossing fingers before the end of 2026. It's called Heard, Transforming Leadership Through the Power of Listening. I'm going to quote you in that book, Michelle. I'm grabbing little snippets from this interview. I'm going to drop you in as a case study because this is gold in what you just shared. Again, Michelle Rodriguez, the Director of Diversity, Inclusion, Belonging at LinkedIn. Follow her on LinkedIn. Just her wisdom is so important. We need more people like you, Michelle.
Oh, likewise, Nancy. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here, and we will catch you on our next one. And thank you again.